whether we have a verb in the sentence, and what are the tests that we can do to know that we have a verb versus, for example, a noun. And if you look at the second grouping on your list in your syntactic categories handout, you're going to see the test for verbs. So the first one is third person singular present s. What does that mean? So when you have a sentence like, she bakes cookies. She bakes cookies. What does this mean? It means we have this individual out there. What do we know about the individual? That it's singular and that it's feminine. And we know that she's engaged in the act of baking cookies. In other words, cookies is the object of the action of baking. It's the thing that is being baked. So the idea is that when we look at this verb bakes, what's interesting is that we can see that it's comprised of two parts. It's comprised of the verb itself, which is bake, as well as this S marker at the end. And notice that this S marker is completely different from the marker that we see at the end of nouns when we have plurals. So for example, if you have cookies, cookie is the singular, cookies is the plural. However, when you have bake versus bakes, it's not the case that you're talking about plural bakings or something like that. This is still a singular form. It just happens to overlap and sound the same as the plural marker, but it has nothing to do with it. So in other words, how would you know if you have an instance of the third person singular present tense marker? Is you would put it into a sentence where the subject of the sentence is third person singular. In other words, he, she, it, John, Mary, any name. So Mary bakes cookies. If you said Mary bake cookies, you would be missing this piece of information, this third person singular present tense. And notice that it's only when we have that form of the subject that we will have the third person singular present tense marker. If you switch the subject to I bake cookies. Notice that there's no more S here, right? I bake cookies. We wouldn't say I bakes cookies. He hits the car. Now we have the S. Why? Because you have he, third person singular present tense. If we switch to we hit the car. Or you hit the car. Or they hit the car. Notice that in English, unlike in many languages, like Romance languages, Spanish, for example, you would have a marker on the end of each of these words telling you what the features are of the subject of the sentence. In English, we don't have that except for the third person singular present tense. That's the leftover form of verbal inflection that we have in English. In older forms of English, it used to be more like Spanish, where you would have a marker at the end of each and every verb, and that would tell you who the subject of the sentence is. And right now in English, we have only the third person singular present tense. So if you can form the third person singular present tense from a word, it must be a verb.